So I'm sure you've heard all of the whispers. Who's that third-party candidate? Is it real what they say? Can we really be free? Is it true? My vote really does matter? The question isn't who's going to let us. The question is who's going to stop us. You've witnessed the movement grow day after day and year after year. For decades, Dr. Jo Jorgensen has been uniting human beings and growing communities. And now, she's running for the Libertarian President of the United States. Her sole aspiration is to unite us all with real change, to put an end to the broken promises and hidden agendas. It's time to return the power to the people. It's time we get a say. It's time we follow principles. We need to be transparent about what we say and what we are going to do. We've got this. We are capable of real change for real people. Let's be the first ones free again. Please welcome Dr. Jo Jorgensen.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having such a beautiful day waiting for me, and for even turning the tree red. I couldn't, it's gorgeous. So I'd like to start off by telling you about my grandmother. She's the one who gave me the love of this country. She's the one who taught me American values and how in this country you can work hard and you can make it. And the reason she had such a love of the country is because she was an immigrant. And she told me that in the old country, it didn't matter how hard you worked. It didn't matter if you worked a second or third job. The government just took away your extra money so that everybody would have the same. And listening to her, it sounds like maybe she's from the old Soviet Union or an Eastern Bloc country. Actually, she was from Denmark. And unfortunately, our country is headed towards Denmark more and more every day. So it was my grandmother's vision of liberty and the basic principles of the Libertarian Party that bring me here today. I've been crisscrossing the country, as you can see in the bus, and everywhere I go, I hear the same thing from people, that the old system just isn't working. And rather than waiting for Washington to fix it, which they're not since they're the ones who caused it, I'm here to tell you that I think that you know best. And that's why I'm asking you for your vote for President of the United States. As your president, I will get government out of the way so my grandmother's vision of the American dream can be a reality for us all. Our current government is too big, too bossy, too nosy, too intrusive. And I ask, what gives them the right? We need to put the decision-making power back into your hands because you can spend your money better than any special interest, lobbyist, or bureaucrat in Washington can. Americans would never budget to spend $80 billion every year to keep families apart from their loved ones, but that's exactly what our government does with its prison system. We cannot claim to be the land of the free when we lead the world in incarcerations. We have 5% of the world's population that house 20% of its prisoners. One of the biggest factors that led to a quadrupling of our prison population since 1980 is the racist and destructive war on drugs. In particular, mandatory minimums have taken discretion out of the hands of judges and instead forced mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters to be put in jail for 10, 20 years, sometimes even for life, for a supposed crime that had no victim. All we have to do is take a step back to the Prohibition era to see its parallels. Despite realizing how poorly alcohol prohibition went, we have replaced it with a carbon copy. Drug kingpins have replaced mob bosses, and drug dens have replaced speakeasies. When was the last time you heard of a liquor store owner going up and down the halls of a high school trying to push gin onto the high school students? Or when's the last time you heard of a vodka addict breaking into houses in order to support a vodka habit? And when's the last time you heard of 2 liquor store owners having a shootout over the best corner? What we have now is not a drug problem. What we have is a prohibition problem. There should be no law to prevent you from owning an object, whether it's a gun to protect yourself or drugs for whatever reason you wish. If there is no victim, there is no crime. As your president, I will federally decriminalize all drugs and encourage states to treat drug use as a health issue, not a criminal issue. We should allow the medical community to deal with substance abuse in a way that salvages lives instead of throwing them away. Accordingly, I will pardon anyone convicted at the federal level of victimless crimes. These are just a few steps towards ending the over-incarceration of people of color and letting consensual adult activities become safer and destigmatized. In addition to overcrowding our federal prisons, the war on drugs has negatively affected our communities and interactions that many people here have with police. The drug war has single-handedly created gangs that police themselves, often through violence. Consequently, the federal government has created a police state, including the Drug Enforcement Administration, which receives over $3 billion of our tax dollars annually. They have repeatedly raided medical marijuana clinics in states where medical marijuana is completely legal. And unfortunately, long gone is a friendly local patrol officer who walks the beat and knows everyone in the neighborhood by name. Instead, nameless, faceless SWAT teams have been imported from the federal government to make Americans feel like enemy combatants in their own neighborhoods. And it doesn't stop with the DEA. In recent months, we have seen the Department of Homeland Security, which receives another $50 billion in tax dollars every year, patrolling our streets in military fatigues and armored cars, attacking even those who are peacefully protesting, and attacking the media. As your president, I will defund federal involvement in policing, including the DEA and DHS. That means ending the supplying of surplus military equipment like tanks and tear gas to over 8,000 federal, state, and local police forces. I will end no-knock raids, which too often end up killing innocent bystanders like Breonna Taylor. And as Libertarian Congressman Justin Amash has brought up, when police do misbehave, it is nearly impossible to take legal action against police because of an arcane doctrine known as qualified immunity, which states that victims can only successfully sue an officer when a clear civil rights violation has already been established in a prior case. When I am president, I will end qualified immunity so that police are held to the same standard as everyone else. While millions of Americans have suffered from government's war on drugs, almost every American has suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic in some way. South Korea confirmed its first coronavirus case within a day of our first case and quickly jumped ahead in testing, containing the spread. As infections in the U.S. skyrocketed, South Korea nearly eradicated COVID-19, and they did it without any lockdowns. A testing initiative that was led by Bill Gates was the first to roll out tests in the United States that could be done outside of a hospital. And over the course of 10 weeks, they processed about 20,000 tests. But on May 12th, the FDA stopped them from further testing and said that they needed, quote unquote, further assessment. This is just one example of how the FDA has worsened the COVID-19 crisis and made it extremely difficult for anyone to get tested. Currently, only those companies with enough money and resources are even able to get FDA approval, and once they do, they weaponize their patents to hold a monopoly. It costs about $1 billion to bring a drug to market, and thanks to the FDA, about a 10-year process. Meanwhile, it's the patients who suffer, desperately waiting for drugs that just might save their lives. New medicines and procedures should get to patients as quickly and safely as possible. When I am your president, I will get rid of the efficacy requirement of the FDA, if not the FDA entirely. The FDA is not the only issue with the American healthcare system. Let's be honest, it's not working for anyone. My heart goes out to the millions of Americans who've been left behind, those families who have been bankrupted. Now, for decades, politicians in Washington, D.C. have insisted it's the fault of the free market, and that's why we need a single-payer healthcare system. Well, I have news for them. We haven't had anything close to a free market in nearly a century. The alternative to our current big government failure isn't an even bigger government failure. When I hear politicians say we need Medicare for all, what I'm hearing them say is we need VA hospital for all. This top-down monopoly is unacceptable for any person, let alone those who are willing to sacrifice their lives for our country. We cannot wait for government bureaucrats to decide who lives and who dies. We must put control back into the patient's hands. As I see it, the biggest problem our healthcare system has is that our insurance really isn't insurance at all. In any other industry, insurance is only there for unexpected events. That's not the way our healthcare system works. Imagine if your car insurance paid for gas, oil, and car washes. First of all, you would have absolutely no reason to shop around for the cheapest gas prices. In fact, you'd probably go to the closest one or the most expensive one that gives you free coffee while you wait, because what do you care? All you do is you whip out your little $5 copay card. And of course, the gas stations have no reason to keep their prices low and to compete with each other, because they simply pass the prices on to the insurance companies. And from there, the rates would get raised. That's exactly what's happening with our healthcare system. Patients have no reason to shop around for the best price, and healthcare providers have no reason to compete on price. So what happens is costs keep going up, and insurance companies can charge higher prices without any accountability, and we're the ones left footing the bill. Now, the best two examples of how a free market system can work are in Singapore and also the state of Indiana, state of Indiana employees. Singapore has had a system in which insurance is what it's supposed to be. It's there for catastrophic care only. And people in Singapore pay about a third of what we pay in healthcare costs. And by the way, if you're worried about a high deductible, their visits, their office visits are only $10 each. Their doctor office visits in total cost less than our copay. And the state of Indiana offered a system that people quickly jumped on, which lowered prices. The VA healthcare system should be converted to a system like the state of Indiana, where the veterans are given control over their own healthcare dollars, and let them decide how and where and when to use them. Now, the government letdown of our soldiers does not begin with health care. It starts from the time they enlist. There are many who are overseas who weren't even born when the war on terror began. The United States spends more on military than the next 7 countries combined. Additionally, we're in about 160 countries around the world. And what do we have to show for it? In the last 20 years alone, over 500,000 people have died in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Pakistan, including 250,000 civilians. Those are parents, siblings, and children who will never return home. In every election, politicians promise more peace, but they only deliver more war. If I'm elected president, my very first official act will be to bring the troops home. I'm going to turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. Our military must be trained to defend our shores, but we have to stop meddling around the world and make peace with our world neighbors. Unfortunately, the military budget is far from the only example of how the government has misdirected our economy. The IRS taxes Americans at every turn, and the tax system is so complicated that only those who can afford personal accountants and tax lawyers can even navigate the code. That same IRS that taxes us to death probes every personal financial decision we make, deciding how much we should pay. Meanwhile, the government itself accumulates more debt. Now, you got some politicians in Washington say we should increase military spending, while the other half are saying we should increase domestic spending. So what's our bipartisan compromise? They simply increase all spending. As your president, my veto pen is going to need a lot of extra ink. Runaway spending is also made possible by the Federal Reserve. When the federal government isn't able to raise taxes, it simply prints more money. Without any backing, since the Fed was created over a century ago, the American dollar has lost 96% of its value. We need to reduce regulations and allow cryptocurrency and any other form of currency to enter the market. As your president, I will first audit and then end the Federal Reserve. I will eliminate the IRS and work with Congress towards eliminating the federal income tax altogether. It's time to move money out of the government sector and back to the people who earned it. Politicians and bureaucrats don't know what you need. You do. When it comes to cutting spending, we can't take any solutions off the table. I would encourage baseline budgeting. So instead of simply assuming an increase every year, we instead start at zero and only add what's vital. It's time for the government to balance its checkbook in the same way American families do. Given the challenges we face as a country, it's easy to feel like the change I'm talking about just can't happen. But I believe it can because I believe in you. I believe in the individuals who make up our great country. Because I see America through my grandmother's eyes, a place where the rights of the individual are greater than the power of government. A place where liberty means minimum government and maximum freedom. A place where the American dream isn't a dream at all, it's real and it's right there in front of you because you made it happen. As I ask for your vote this November, it's not because I'm asking you to cast a vote for me. Instead, I think that you should vote for you. You know best how your money should be spent. You know best how to prioritize the needs of your family. You know best what's best for you. Thank you so very much. Thank you.